Hey there, amazing friends. I warmly invite you to join me on this exciting journey by subscribing to my channel, liking, commenting, and sharing my videos. Every like, comment, and share brings us closer together and fuels my passion to create more great content. Your support truly makes all the difference. Thank you for being the heart of this community. Howl in the Hills, the elk-headed phantom that locals claim stalks high mountain trails at dusk. In the rugged expanse of the high mountains where the air grows thin and the pines stand like silent sentinels, a legend has long haunted the locals, a myth that, for generations, has been passed down in hushed voices around flickering campfires and in the quiet moments just before dusk. The story speaks of an otherworldly creature, known only as the Elk-Headed Phantom, whose presence is felt on the lonely trails of the hills when the sun begins its slow descent, bathing the peaks in a dying glow of crimson and gold. There are no modern cameras or scientific instruments that can capture the elusive figure with any certainty. Instead, eyewitnesses describe it in terms that border on the surreal: an immense, gaunt silhouette with the head of an elk, antlers that twist like ancient tree limbs, and eyes that gleam with a feral, almost intelligent light. The phantom is said to roam the high mountain trails, its mournful howl echoing through the valleys, as if calling out to the lost souls of the wilderness. What began as a mere folktale for fearful children has evolved into a subject of intense debate among cryptozoologists, folklorists, and even hardened hikers who have encountered inexplicable tracks and strange, otherworldly sounds on moonless nights. The legend of the elk-headed phantom is rooted in the very soil of these ancient hills. According to local lore, centuries ago, a tribe of nomads once roamed these mountains, a people whose reverence for nature bordered on the mystical. They believed that the spirits of the wild took on the form of mighty creatures, guardians of the land who could appear at will. One fateful winter, during a season of unrelenting storms and bitter cold, an elk of unusual size and bearing was seen leading a group of hunters to a sacred glen, where it is said that the boundaries between the physical world and the spirit realm were thin. The hunters, moved by a mixture of awe and superstition, captured an ornate amulet fashioned from bone and silver, believing it to be a talisman of protection and prosperity. Yet the amulet, it is whispered, was cursed. Its possession brought misfortune and death upon those who dared to keep it for too long. As the tribe's fortunes waned, and they were eventually forced to abandon their ancestral lands, the amulet disappeared into legend, and with it, the memory of that great elk was forever transformed into the phantom of the hills. For decades, travelers along the winding mountain trails reported eerie phenomena that defied conventional explanation. At twilight, as the last rays of sun bled into the horizon and a shroud of mist began to settle over the rugged landscape, many would hear a deep, mournful howl that resonated through the valleys. Some claimed that the sound was accompanied by the soft crunch of hooves on gravel and the rustle of underbrush as a massive creature moved silently in the dark. Others swore that when they looked up from the trail, they saw the silhouette of a great beast, a creature with a lean, powerful body of a large predator, and, most striking of all, the head of an elk, complete with sprawling antlers that caught the fading light. These descriptions varied from one witness to another, yet a common thread emerged. The creature was never seen up close, always remaining at a distance, as if it were deliberately avoiding any direct encounter. In the years that followed, the legend spread from one remote hamlet to another, its details morphing with each retelling. Some elders recalled that the phantom's eyes burned with an unnatural light, while others claimed its presence was heralded by an inexplicable drop in temperature and the sudden silence of the mountain birds. One autumn evening, a seasoned hiker named Malcolm, known among locals for his unwavering determination to explore every corner of the high trails, set out on a solo trek through the most remote sections of the range. Malcolm had heard the stories in passing, a mixture of warnings and curious fascination, but he was not one to be easily frightened. With his backpack loaded and a weathered journal tucked into his vest, he ventured into a region where the pine forests gave way to barren, rocky outcrops, and the wind seemed to whisper forgotten secrets. As the day waned and the sky turned a deep shade of indigo, Malcolm found himself alone on a narrow trail that skirted a vast clearing. It was there that, just as dusk began to surrender to the encroaching darkness, he heard it, a long, soulful howl that rose from the depths of the moorland. His heart pounded in his chest as he strained his eyes in the gloom, and then he saw it, far off on a ridge, a shadow that moved with deliberate grace. The form was enormous, and although the details were obscured by the gathering mist, Malcolm was struck by the unmistakable outline of antlers sweeping upward like the branches of an ancient oak. Overcome by both fear and wonder, he reached for his camera, desperate to capture evidence of the legendary creature. Yet, as he focused, the shadow seemed to vanish into the darkness, leaving behind only the echo of its mournful cry. For Malcolm, that fleeting glimpse was enough to ignite a burning curiosity and a lingering dread that haunted his dreams for many nights thereafter. In a nearby village, a group of local teenagers dared each other to venture into the high trails at dusk, spurred on by urban legends and the thrill of breaking curfew. They laughed nervously as they set off with flashlights and smartphones in hand, determined to debunk the myth of the elk-headed phantom once and for all. As they ascended a steep, rocky path, the air grew cooler and a dense fog rolled in. The playful banter gradually gave way to a tense silence, punctuated only by the crunch of gravel beneath their feet. Suddenly, one of them let out a blood-curdling scream, a sound that sent the others scrambling in panic. They later recounted that in the midst of their hasty retreat, they saw a figure standing motionless on a ridge, illuminated by the faint glow of the setting sun. The figure's outline was that of a giant elk, its head turned as if watching them with unblinking, sorrowful eyes. The teens fled without looking back, and the incident quickly became the latest chapter in the haunted lore of the hills. Although no tangible evidence was ever found, the story was etched into local memory, reaffirming the belief that the phantom was not simply a myth, but a tangible presence in the wilderness. Scholars of cryptozoology and folklore have long been fascinated by the enduring legend of the elk-headed phantom. They have combed through historical records, searching for any mention of similar creatures in ancient texts, and found tantalizing references in the oral traditions of the mountain peoples. Some ancient manuscripts, though fragmented and written in archaic dialects, allude to a great horned guardian who once roamed the highlands, a protector of sacred groves who later became a harbinger of misfortune when the balance of nature was disturbed by human greed. Others point to ancient stone carvings found in remote rock shelters that depict a creature bearing the unmistakable form of an elk, its eyes rendered with an intensity that suggests a consciousness beyond that of mere animal instinct. Such artifacts, while open to interpretation, lend a historical weight to the legend that cannot be easily dismissed as modern superstition. The watchers of these artifacts argue that the elk-headed phantom might be the remnant of a long-forgotten age, a vestige of a time when the world was wilder and the boundaries between myth and reality were blurred. They suggest that the creature could be a surviving member of an ancient species, one that once thrived in the untamed wilderness but was driven into near extinction by the encroachment of civilization. In this view, the phantom is not a ghost in the literal sense, but a living, albeit reclusive, relic of a primordial era. Despite numerous sightings and a growing body of anecdotal evidence, modern scientific inquiry has so far been unable to provide a definitive explanation for the phenomenon. Ecologists and biologists have scoured the high trails for traces of unusual fauna, yet no tracks, scat, or DNA samples have been conclusively linked to an unknown creature of such fantastical proportions. The local environment, harsh and variable, is home to many creatures: elk, bears, wolves, but none match the description of a gigantic, spectral being with antlers that seem to glow in the twilight. Some researchers have proposed that the elk-headed phantom might be a form of social memory, a collective hallucination triggered by the isolation and harsh conditions of high-altitude life, compounded by local folklore passed down through generations. In times of stress, when the natural world seems indifferent or even hostile, the mind can conjure images of protectors or avengers drawn from the depths of myth. This theory, while offering a psychological explanation, does not account for the consistency of the accounts or the subtle physical evidence, such as oddly arranged hoofprints or disturbances in the snow that some observers report. Others have looked to atmospheric phenomena, suggesting that optical illusions created by unusual light refractions at dusk might transform a common elk into an otherworldly apparition. Yet these explanations fall short when confronted with the detailed narratives of seasoned hikers and longtime residents who swear by the presence of a conscious, almost deliberate, force moving through the hills. One particularly compelling investigation was conducted by a team of local cryptozoologists who spent an entire summer camping along the most remote mountain trails. They set up an array of motion-activated cameras, thermal sensors, and audio recorders in locations where sightings had been most frequent. For weeks, the devices lay dormant under the relentless scrutiny of the wilderness, capturing nothing more than the usual antics of deer and the distant howl of wind through the trees. Then, on a chilly evening, just as the sun was sinking behind a jagged ridge, one of the cameras flickered to life. In the grainy footage, a large, dark shape could be seen moving deliberately along the trail, its outline distorted by the shifting fog. At first, the image was too vague to be conclusive, but when the footage was reviewed frame by frame, experts noted the distinct shape of elongated antlers and a body posture that suggested an upright, nearly humanoid carriage, an attribute that defied simple classification. The thermal sensors registered a significant heat signature, one that was anomalously low for a large mammal, as if the creature's body was absorbing rather than emitting heat. Audio recordings captured a deep, resonant howl that seemed to reverberate off the distant cliffs, a sound that sent shivers down the spine of even the most skeptical team member. Though the data was not irrefutable proof of an unknown species, it lent a weight of credibility to the long-standing legend and set off a flurry of discussion among cryptozoologists around the region. Over time, the legend of the elk-headed phantom has seeped into every facet of local culture. Elders in the mountain villages recount the tale with a mixture of reverence and sorrow, recalling how their ancestors believed that the phantom was a guardian spirit turned vengeful by humanity's encroachment upon sacred lands. Festivals are held on the longest night of the year, during which participants wear masks designed to mimic the creature's fearsome visage, and tales are recited of a time when the high trails were ruled by giants with antlers that touched the heavens. Children grow up hearing bedtime stories that blend factual encounters with supernatural warnings, a cautionary blend intended to instill respect for the raw power of nature. For some, the elk-headed phantom is not a monster to be feared, but a symbol of the wild, untamed spirit of the mountains, a reminder that even in an age of modern convenience and technological prowess, there remain mysteries that defy explanation. Yet, despite its integration into local lore, the phenomenon continues to provoke heated debates in academic circles. Some researchers dismiss the accounts as exaggerations born of isolation and folklore, arguing that natural selection and environmental pressures would have long since eliminated any creature of such fantastical proportions. They contend that the sightings are best explained by misidentifications of known animals, elk seen in unusual lighting, or even large deer whose behavior is altered by seasonal changes. However, these critics often find themselves at a loss when confronted with the consistency of the descriptions and the detailed observations provided by experienced hikers and local residents. The phantom is said to appear at dusk, when the interplay of light and shadow can create illusions, but the accounts consistently note a deliberate, purposeful movement, as if the creature were aware of its observers and intentionally maintained a distance to avoid a direct encounter. Its reported behavior, pausing to watch, then slowly disappearing into the mist, suggests a level of intelligence that would be unusual in ordinary wildlife. Such qualities have led some to propose that the elk-headed phantom might be a surviving relic of an ancient, possibly semi-mythical species, a creature that once roamed these high trails during a time when the world was far less touched by human hands. Alternatively, a more fringe theory posits that the phantom might be a spectral projection, a manifestation of the collective memory of the land itself, shaped by the hopes and fears of generations of people who have passed through these remote areas. Regardless of the explanation, the mystery of the elk-headed phantom has endured. Expeditions, both scientific and amateur, continue to be mounted in the hopes of capturing undeniable evidence. Drone footage, high-resolution cameras, and even night vision goggles have been employed in attempts to record the elusive figure. Each time, the results are frustratingly inconclusive: brief flickers of movement, indistinct shapes in the fog, and eerie sounds that are quickly swallowed by the natural noise of the wilderness. Even when equipment does capture what might be evidence, a set of oddly arranged hoofprints in soft snow, or a clear audio clip of a haunting howl, the data is always met with skepticism by the broader scientific community. The elusive nature of the phenomenon, combined with the inherent challenges of working in remote, rugged terrain, ensures that definitive proof remains just out of reach. Yet, for the local communities and the many watchers who have dedicated years to the study of cryptozoological phenomena, the absence of indisputable evidence does little to diminish their conviction that the elk-headed phantom is real, a silent, enigmatic guardian of the high mountains whose presence challenges our understanding of nature. The tale of the elk-headed phantom is one of those rare legends that straddles the boundary between myth and science, between the rational and the inexplicable. It has inspired countless stories, songs, and even works of art, a haunting image that lingers in the minds of those who have encountered it, whether in a fleeting glimpse on a misty trail or in the careful recordings of dedicated researchers. For some, the phantom is a reminder that nature is vast and mysterious, that not every phenomenon can be neatly categorized or explained by modern science. For others, it is a symbol of the wild and untamed spirit of the mountains, a spirit that resists domestication, that endures in the silence of the high trails even as civilization encroaches ever closer. And in the quiet moments just before dusk, when the light begins to fade and the shadows lengthen, one cannot help but feel that somewhere out there, on a lonely trail high above the world, the elk-headed phantom still roams, its eyes aglow, its antlers slicing the twilight, and its mournful howl echoing across the hills in a timeless lament for the wildness that once was. In the end, the mystery remains unsolved, a puzzle that continues to confound investigators and captivate the imaginations of those who venture into the high mountains. The elk-headed phantom, with its spectral form and elusive presence, endures as a testament to the enduring power of legend and the boundless mysteries that nature still holds. Its story is not merely one of fear, but also of wonder, a reminder that even in an age of modern technology and relentless progress, there are still corners of the world where the past lingers in the present, where the boundaries between myth and reality blur, and where, if one listens carefully enough at the right moment, a haunting howl in the hills may just reveal the echo of an ancient, untamed spirit.